Have you ever wondered why Sonic enemies are so forgettable? Or even more so, why Mario enemies are so memorable? If I show you a picture of these enemies, 95% of you can probably tell me that this is a Goomba and this is a Koopa. But when I show you this image, what do you see? I bet not even half of you could tell me what level this enemy is from, much less this enemy's name. Well, for those curious, this is a Burrowbot, and it is most famously in the level Labyrinth Zone and Scrap Brain Zone. What about this one? This is a Uni, found primarily in Starlight Zone. But why do you not know these enemies' names, while you do know the Mario ones? What makes Mario's enemies memorable and Sonic's enemies pass and go? Well, it comes down to 5 main factors that we are going to talk about today. So sit back, relax, grab your snacks and a warm blanket, and let's talk about it. Hi, howdy, hi, hey everyone. This is Archfiend Allister, and I will be your lovely host for today. Let's start with issue number 1, level layout. While Mario enemies are most commonly found among a vast variety of levels, Sonic enemies are usually found in a handful of levels. You see, Mario Bros. On the NES was restricted by a memory limit. Thus, reusing the enemies over and over and over and over again was a requirement. Sonic the Hedgehog 1 was released much later, without the need for memory limit workarounds. In layman's terms, they had more space to design levels. So while you'll see a Goomba in World 1, 2, 3, and so on, Sonic enemies are very rarely reused, with some only being in one zone entirely. And even the ones that are reused in future games get entirely different looks so they stay fresh. This alone can be a main reason as to why they are so forgettable. Design. Character designs are very important to the success of any video game. And, like it or not, the human eye is actually trained to look at more natural shapes. This is true in all nature. The eyes find natural things more appealing to look at than mechanical things, and that's just what Sonic's enemies are. Mechanical. And while this is not a flaw by any means, this is certainly a reason why Mario's enemies are much more appealing to look at to us, while Sonic's enemies may come off as cluttered or appeal less to us as humans. A good example of this is Samus's Varia suit design. Just looking at these examples, you can clearly see, and hopefully agree, the one on the right is much more appealing to look at. Now, that's not saying it's better by any means. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder after all, and everyone has their own opinions based on personal taste, nostalgia, design, and other factors. Now, I'm not trying to say one design is better, I am just clearly pointing out that the one on the right is more appealing for the human eye to look at, because it has more natural shapes rather than the blocky and mechanical looking suit. So with that in mind, it is a lot easier for humans to focus on natural things than it is unnatural things. This is the second, and I'd argue one of the most important reasons that Sonic enemies don't stick out as much as Mario enemies. Placement. For me, this probably sticks out more than most, but the placement of enemies are extremely important for a good level design. This goes and rings true for games that are like roguelikes or platformers of any kind. Mario utilizes this expertly. While this is nothing against Sonic the Hedgehog's games are more about maintaining speed than they are platforming. So, their enemy placement is a little more careless, less strategic, and more sporadic. What I mean by that is, you'll zoom by 10 Sonic enemies by the time you see one in a Mario game. The speed alone is enough to zoom by, barely even noticing an enemy design. But add that on top of the fact that they rarely repeat the same enemies per zone, it is easy to see why we don't remember them much. Consistency. Consistency itself is probably the most common issue for Sonic enemies, not being as memorable as Mario enemies. You see, Nintendo still uses Goombas and Koopas to this day. It would be difficult for you to find a Mario game without a Goomba in it. Even spin-off games like Mario Kart, or Mario Party, or even Bowser's Inside Story feature these enemies, such as Koopas. But Sonic, however, does not do this. They choose a less simple, more creative approach. You see, almost every mainline Sonic game features a brand new story with brand new bosses and thus brand new enemies. Everything you see is fresh and creatively designed for the game you are playing. While this has its ups and downs, this is clearly one of the reasons Sonic enemies don't stick in your brain that well. The lack of consistency and the fact they only use a lot of these enemies once per game makes it easy to move on to the next thing and forget the enemies used in the previous game. That being said, that is not always the case. The newest Sonic game, for example, Frontiers, uses a lot of old enemy designs in cyberspace. But all that aside, there is still one problem lurking, which brings us to our last reason today, and that is none other than speed and uniqueness. I briefly touched back on this fact back in number 3, which was placement, but Sonic moves so much faster than Mario, so it's a lot harder to get a good look at his enemies. But on top of that, Mario's enemies have very noticeable and recognizable silhouettes. I mean, look at them. If you notice, you can clearly tell what these are. Koopa, Goomba, Dry Bones, but I mean, Dry Bones is just another Koopa silhouette, quite literally. But not only do Sonic's enemies primarily have hard to trace outlines, but also they all follow a common theme: synthetic. They all seem to blend together because unlike Goombas and Koopas and Chain Chomps, which are simple and very distinct from one another, all Sonic's enemies are just robots. The badniks all blend together. I just want to say, and I cannot stress this enough, this is not bad design. This is simply an alternate design. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been Archfiend Allister, and hopefully I will see you next time.